The Silver Squeeze 2.0. This is one for the Wall Street silver crowd. So this has been really interesting because silver and gold and copper have all been bulling into this market crash. So let's take a look at the history of silver. We'll take a look at gold and copper a little bit and figure out what is going on with, silver as the market and Bitcoin are crashing. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and stuff. Let me pop over to gold real quick. People are saying gold's breaking out and going bullish. And while it is in an uptrend into this market crash, it's not in a breakout position that I would call it. It's not breaking out. We're in the same down channel we've been in for a long time. And gold has basically been pulling back the whole time the market's been bulling since 20 whatever. Yeah. So, right. Gold may break out, and copper is just kind of consolidating sideways, but it's not pulling back. Right? So that's copper did a huge rip, and it's just gone sideways. But gold and copper are not pulling back with the market crash, which is interesting because a lot of times if the market's crashing, you get margin calls. Gold, everything sells off with margin call, even though they might recover quickly. But let's go take a look at silver because it's doing some interesting stuff. Generally in an environment where gold is like a monetary metal and copper, which is like a commodity metal, like silver is kind of like half monetary, half commodity. So if those two are doing well, silver would generally do twice as well. But you need both of those happening at the same time. And they sort of are right now. But let's go back and take a look at silver. How far back? Well, in the Great Depression, I'm not going to go that far back on the chart, but in the Great Depression, silver absolutely tanked. And that's a huge deflationary collapse, right? And then the 70s, we had the huge inflation, silver ripped to the upside. So historically, silver has done great in high inflation, done horribly in deflation. And where is this? 93, it kind of bottomed out of the inflationary run. The government stopped using silver as a monetary metal. It went in a huge bear market. There's a pretty decent oversupply of silver relative to commercial usage. It tanked $3. And then I've heard a lot of people say that silver crashed during the dot-com bubble, which is a little bold. It pulled back slightly, but didn't do it. It came down with the crash, but not much. And then in the 2008 crash, it was in the middle of a bull run. And the 2008 crash, silver ripped to the downside. The general margin call thing, it went in half real quick. But then it continued the bull run, right? So generally in market crashes, silver doesn't do well. And if it's a deflationary thing, which this was, but silver was weirdly in a bull run during that. So just kind of the history, silver doesn't do well in deflation, and it does not do well in market crashes usually. And then we have the COVID crash here, silver ripped to the downside. So you can see there's a pretty long history of crashing with the market. But this time, not that the market has crashed out, it's just started to maybe crash, but it's been bulling into it, which is interesting. So what I've been thinking is we're not really in a market crash. Let's take a look at the S&P real quick. I have some descending wedges and stuff to look at later, but we're not really in a crash yet. We're just pulling back to sort of the midway point here, and silver is bulling as we're pulling back. So that's interesting. But I was listening to a big episode with Keith Neumeyer, who I think I pronounced his name correctly, who's the CEO of Majestic Silver. And he was talking about a lot of fundamentals with silver right now, which is the supply of silver is super low And the commercial demand keeps increasing for all electronics, for solar. It's completely necessary for general tech economy and the green economy, like decarbonizing. Silver's an essential metal that's in short supply. But what's happening is the banks are an intermediary for all the silver trades. So say Tesla or Apple or whoever wants to buy a bunch of silver over maybe like a 6-month period, like they'll do a contract with the bank. Like say, for instance, the bank does a contract here, right? And they're going to supply silver over the next 6 months or the next year. And the bank controls paper silver contracts and derivatives, and they can short it and they can hold the price down. And so if they're doing a big contract to supply silver, they're going to want to hold it like level or down to where that contract is during the duration of the contract. So so it's being manipulated and held down by the intermediaries, which are huge banks that can control the silver market. And you have like the SLV, which is like paper silver ETF. And that's like the fake sort of spot price of silver. But the general idea, in order for silver to really take off, there would need to be a few different things. Like you could cut out the bank as an intermediary. If the miners could like refine and deliver their own silver directly to companies and cut the bank out, then the bank would not have any reason to pull it down. But that's not happening anytime soon, I don't think. Like Majestic Silver is the biggest like pure silver producer, and they're not anywhere close to being able to like refine their own silver or anything like that. I mean, they can like mint coins for retail people, but it's a small amount. But they can't refine like industrial silver for big companies and deliver it and everything. So the banks are and the COMEX are gonna continue to be an intermediary that's gonna pull silver down. But my idea with physical silver is it's a short supply commodity, and it has a lot of upside potential, even though it's being held down. If banks get in huge trouble, which is entirely possible soon, it's sort of like it's a monetary commodity asset that you can have a physical asset. And it's possible, like I don't know where the fair value of silver would be right now if there were no banks involved. Probably be 100 or higher probably right now. But like say banks go down and you don't have access to credit cards or checking or something like that. Like you have some sort of monetary asset as an insurance policy, and it could like rip to the upside in that scenario, especially if we have high inflation and banks are getting in trouble and things like that. It's a pretty interesting insurance asset to hold as a physical thing, instead of everything being online and completely controlled by the banking system. That, and also Bitcoin is now coming down. So people have been saying Bitcoin is a inflation hedge. It's the new gold. I think all of that's a bunch of BS. That's not what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is a property rights system. But as we see Bitcoin come down into this inflation scare, people are not going to be thinking of Bitcoin as an inflation hedge, and they'll start looking at gold and silver again. So I think there's a lot of upside potential on silver, but it does get manipulated down by the COMEX and the banks. And so none of this is investment advice, but I do think it is interesting to have some silver or gold sort of as an insurance or maybe a speculative asset. But I have no interest in like SLV, like paper silver contracts. So yeah, let's look at some other things on silver. So there's like SLV is the paper silver that's controlled by JP Morgan. This is the one I don't mess with. It tracks the price of silver pretty well. But this is fake shares of silver basically that are way beyond the physical supply, and that's used to hold the price down. So I don't ever touch this stuff. But PSLV is the Sprott Fund. Physical silver, Sprott Physical Silver Trust. That silver is in a vault in Canada, and the majority of of available silver is like held by trusts like this. Like there's not that much available silver. So it's just like most of the silver that is mined is just eaten up by industrial, electronics, solar, stuff like that. So just in terms of supply and demand, silver should push up. But it's kind of the fundamentals versus the paper market is what's kind of controlling where it is. And then if we take a look at like AG, this is First Majestic. This is a silver miner. If silver goes into a bull run, this is a super interesting silver company. This is one of the bigger companies that is actually a silver miner, because most of the silver just comes from byproduct of other mining. But First Majestic is actually a silver mining company. They're based in Canada. Their mines are in Mexico. And I was just listening, saying their CEO was talking about it, and he's like, well, Mexico is like not that great of a jurisdiction now, because the Mexican government is like getting a little bit threatening, and they're becoming more socialistic. And he's like, looking at other jurisdictions and things now. So there's a little bit of sketchiness, but just on the technicals here, like we kind of have this wedge breakout, and we're coming into support area on the technicals. This chart looks good. Silver's bulling into the crash, like spot silver. So the technicals on silver look pretty good right now. There's Gato, which is a newer silver miner that's also Mexican jurisdiction. That's been a little bit more sporadic. This one's interesting. And this one is just did a really cool technical thing as well. Like it did this pullback under resistance, broke out on top, and now it's kind of finding support on top of the resistance area. And this thing looks like it could take off. This is a cool technical setup here for a breakout here. You get a little breakout and a little support area. And if silver starts bulling, this can go a lot harder. I don't know where a target would be, but where is it? Like 10, could go to 20 in a few months or something if silver starts bulling. So the silver miners are an interesting play. If you want to do online kind of trading, none of this is investment advice. But yeah, if you want like a leveraged way to play silver, you can do like call options or something like that on, on the silver miners. And so those may become interesting soon. They look like they're maybe pulling into like support areas. And silver may be bulling into this market situation. And what I've been saying about the market is I don't think we're like crashing out. And I'm painting some like potential downside stuff, but it's just a matter of like when do you break out of the downtrend. And I think that we're just kind of rotating out of the very high risk stuff, rotating out of cryptos, rotating out of meme stocks, and a lot of the EV stuff is getting in trouble. The newer tech stuff is getting in trouble. And we're seeing like the NASDAQ and the big tech stuff kind of pull back a bit now. I don't know how far. I don't think that can pull back as far as the other stuff. Like a lot of the other things have crashed 50% or more already. But that's just like a pretty general market cycle. Fundamental thing is, early market, you bull bonds, and then you bull like the super high risk growth stocks like tech and growth, and those will rotate out before you get to the top of the market. And so that's what we've been seeing the past year, and especially just now. We're seeing the high risk and the growth rotating out, and we may be seeing like the miners and minerals and materials, metals, maybe energy. Oil is a little tricky, but that's a pretty generic, credit, debt cycle, market cycle kind of thing. And that's what we might be seeing now, is just rotating out of the high risk growth stuff, and we're rotating into more physical infrastructure, commodity kind of things. And so, yeah, as far as like a market crash, silver's maybe not bulling into a market crash. This is just more of a rotation out of risky assets into more commodity kind of assets. And so yeah, we may get like a big bull run in commodities just for I don't know, 6 months, 2 years, something like that, to the top of this bubble. Like that might be what runs to the top of the bubble, is things like copper and silver and, you know, other materials kind of stocks. But yeah, anyway, that's a look at silver. Like, I don't think silver is going to go to 100 or something like that right now. But if we do rotate into that type of a market and silver's bulling and gold and copper are all bulling, I mean, there's things like FCX, like copper miners, that could run. The silver miners that I just looked at, you know, Gato or AG, or silver mining stocks that I think are interesting. Or gold. I mean, there's like Barrick Gold or something. Yeah, but anyway, as sort of like speculative plays, if we rotate into that stuff coming into the top of the bubble, the miners could get really interesting. Or as sort of insurance plays for a banking crisis or money crisis kind of thing, physical gold and physical silver, like in your possession, buried in your backyard or whatever, is something to think about. And yeah, so that's the idea with the Silver Squeeze 2.0, is I think we are probably pulling back on the general market a little bit. Not sure how far. I mean, the market could get in trouble, big trouble here, potentially, but I think more likely we just rotate out of a couple things and then we bull back to the top on, yeah, miners, minerals, materials, metals, all those sorts of things. That's the idea with the Silver Squeeze 2.0. And I'll be looking for entries into these trades. Like, I have physical silver from First Majestic. Like, AG is First Majestic. But if you go to the First Majestic store, they're the only miner that mints their own coins, and you can buy like pure 99 point whatever pure silver coins from them directly. And that's what I do when I buy silver. I just buy from them because it's the best price for good quality silver coins. And they ship from Canada, and there's like a import thing if you're coming into the US. Like, if you get more than, I forget the amount, like $1,500 or something like that, you have to like show identity and fill out a bunch of import slips and stuff like that. But if you're buying less than that, they can just ship it without it getting held in customs or anything like that. But yeah, that's the general idea with silver, and I think it is going to be getting interesting here soon. So we'll see how this market crash plays out, and we'll see how gold and silver hold up. But for now, it looks like they're holding up pretty well. And yeah, not investment advice. Happy trading, and good luck on the silver trades.